Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. It is the morning, and I'm in a very cold house, so yeah, got my robe on. So it seems that one of the co-creators to The Punisher, Gerry Conway, wants to reboot The Punisher. He actually wants to race swap him, make it black, so that he could be a black vet who faces the issues that minorities in the world face today. Basically, he wants to make it so that this new black Punisher is dealing with racism and constant bigotry, all the stuff that he perceives is going on today when there is no evidence of humongous racial tension against the black community. Is there racism? Yes, there is racism. But it's prevalent against all the races, including white people. In fact, it's actually more prevalent against white people than it is against black people today. So, yeah, let's get into this, shall we? This comes from Bounding into Comics. The writer is Spencer Bakuli. And, yeah, let's get into it. In the spirit of current Marvel, the Punisher co-creator Gerry Conway has revealed his wishes for the iconic anti-hero to be rebooted as a black armed forces veteran who faces the issues that minorities in the world face today. Conway touched upon his vision of the Punisher's future during an October 2021 appearance in the Endless Thread podcast, invited on by host Amory Siverston and Ben Brock Johnson, for a conversation on Frank Castle's skull logo as a part of the series on the histories of cultural impacts and various pieces of the culture which have been imprinted within society as memes. Essentially, they're saying how the Punisher skull has become a problem because people used it or had a version of it used in the January 6th protests. Beginning his interview with a brief discussion on the character development history, Conway explained the two hosts that the Punisher was originally conceived in protest to the United States involvement in Vietnam, born out of his own belief that the government was taking on the wrong people and ignoring the people who are really dangerous. I think I've often said that the Punisher represents kind of a Rorschach test for the era that the readers discover him in. He continued, for me, in the 70s or early 70s, he was, a response to a dysfunctional era. I'm sorry for the skip in reading, folks. It's a problem that I'm working on. In the 80s, or dysfunctional era in American history. In the 80s, he's a triumphant character representing, a black and white view of the world. And in the 2000s, he's the dysfunctional Punisher. The disparaging tragic hero who is really an outcast and no longer represents anything except his own ID. Well, actually, if you ask me, the 2000s Punisher represented a person who was sick of the inadequacies of law. In fact, in the, I think it was 2004 Punisher, with Thomas Jane, he even said, sometimes it is necessary to operate outside the law in order to shame its inadequacies. This isn't vengeance. Vengeance is not a valid motive. It is an emotional response. No, not vengeance. Punishment. That was what the Punisher was all about in the 2000s, or rather in that specific movie. I had never really followed the comics, but I did get a sense that that was where the comics were going. I mean, even in the game that I used to play, Marvel's Avengers Alliance, back in 2012, it was pretty much, that was Frank Castle's motive, because when you had him as a character, he was the one, or that's basically how he acted. He wanted to punish those who the law wouldn't touch. So, continuing on, after reiterating his well-known disagreement with the use of the Punisher skull by members of the military and law enforcement, eventually claiming to the hosts that when said service members wear the icon of the comic book vigilante, they are saying they are outlaws and that they are criminals and that they are enemies of society. That's not exactly what they're saying. Maybe they just like the skull, the look, the design. Conway explained to Silverstone and Johnson his ideas for reclaiming the skull. It's actually part of the value of the comics is that you can reinterpret these characters as long as you maintain some truth to the original archetype that they represent, he told the pair. You can reinterpret them for the time in which you're creating. Then, he recalled, I've heard one or two people on Twitter saying that there's literally no way that the Punisher logo can ever be anything except a symbol of oppression. And I think that's just, no. Come on. But even if that were the case, sticking your finger in the eye of the bad guys is always a good deal. And putting out sweatshirts or TV shirts, or t-shirts rather. TV shirts, where did I come up with that? That had the BLM logo with the Punisher logo is it's a pretty hefty FU to people who deserve to have an FU, he added, referencing Black Lives Matter Skulls for Justice campaign he launched last June. And they show a bunch of different pictures of the Punisher skulls with Black Lives Matter. Ultimately, Conway affirmed to Silverstone and Johnson, there'll come a time, just like in the 80s, that the character can be rebooted, and turned into something new. Revealing that his personal preference would be that the next iteration of the Punisher would be black, or a black vet, who comes back and faces the issues that minorities face in the world today. Again, as I say, like a Rorschach test. When he does, I'll be proud of him again. So you're saying that the Punisher basically needs to be black in order for you to be proud of him? It's kind of very shallow. Surprisingly, such a reboot would not be the first time Frank found himself race-swapped as a black man, albeit the prior instance was less than an exact equivalent. In 1991, under the direction of storied Punisher writer Mike Baron, Frank found himself in need of a disguise following a razor-thin escape from prison following a brutal beating at the hands of Jigsaw and his goons. Desperate to avoid detection by the Kingpin as he returned to his mission, Frank asks his companion, Melinda Brewer, to give him such extensive cosmetic surgery that even my best friend wouldn't know me. Shockingly, thanks to Melinda taking his request to his near furthest extent, Frank actually awakens to discover that he now has black skin. However, this change was unsurprisingly only temporary, as over the course of a brief 4-issue adventure with Luke Cage, Frank's skin slowly faded back to its original color. What do you make of Conway's idea for a revamped Punisher? Let us know your thoughts on social media and in the comments below. Honestly, my thoughts are, why? You're changing him for woke reasons. You want to put or introduce more real-world bullshit into comics. Yes, I know that real-world stuff has been in comics before. But people are kind of sick of it. People want to be entertained. They don't want to be preached to. Honestly, I'm not a comic reader, so I could care less what the comics do. I'm kind of sick of Marvel and DC as they are right now. They're constantly pandering, and that's why they're losing out to anime. That's why they're losing out to Japanese manga. Because they keep on pandering, and people are sick of it. But yeah, to make him black so that he can face the issues that minorities are facing today. What? An overt push to have them as dominant? to push down white folks, because that is actually what's happening, folks. I'm not joking when I say this. I'm very dead serious. The evidence is very clear out there. If you look all over social media and other areas where videos of people are recorded, you will see a drastic rise in anti-white sentiment. And I think that this needs to stop. Also, I follow what Stan Lee says. If you have an established character, you should leave that character the way they are. He was talking about Peter Parker when people were saying, shouldn't Spider-Man be gay, to represent the gay minorities? I have no problem with a gay superhero. I mean, if you want a gay superhero, make a gay superhero. Or a wonderful thing about the multiverse is that there can be several different Spider-Men. But Peter Parker is known to be straight, a heterosexual male, who is white. They shouldn't change that just to push some agenda. And I think the same applies with the Punisher and other characters. You should not change them simply to push some agenda. Yes, there's a multiverse. Maybe there is a different guy out there who becomes the Punisher, and that they happen to be black. Maybe in some sort of area, there is a character that is black that becomes that universe's Punisher. I would have no problem with that. But to make Frank Castle black, simply to pander and push some false narrative, I think is very stupid and destructive to trying to heal society. You want to help society? Make comic books where people are getting along and calling out hatred, sure. But don't be pushing the whole Black Lives Matter bullshit, and don't be pushing the whole, we need to make this character black so that people can identify with him and so that he can face the hardships of what minorities face. There's no need to do that. We have enough problems in this world as is. We don't need our comics reflecting that. Comics, movies, shows, they were originally meant for a form of escapism. They were never meant to push political ideals or identity political ideals. And that is why people are starting to rebel against them. That is why people are starting to call this stuff out as unnecessary and actually in some very obvious ways racist. So yes, that is going to be the video, folks. Those are my thoughts on this whole wanting to make the Punisher black thing. You all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you think? Let me know all your thoughts, folks. This has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.